So I think what Nicolas and I are here to do is kind of frame a little bit of the space business in terms of what's real, not what's visionary, and then to talk a little bit about how that is a potential opportunity for us here in the Kingdom, and what it means for the nature of experiential tourism, how we can differentiate ourselves and place ourselves through technology, through thinking about experiences differently in the most competitive space that we can in the global marketplace in up-and-coming tourism. So I think for us, to frame the space sector, everybody always thinks about astronauts and going to space and Star Trek, Star Wars, whatever you like. But the reality of what we've seen now is the transition from a heavily government sector, where this was the 60s of the Americans and the Soviets, to a sector now which is becoming dominated by the commerce. It's now something where you can invest in ROI, as if you're investing in chocolate bars or wood or all of these very basic things. The space business is now transitioning into that everyday sector that we see in other parts of the industry. When it comes to tourism, I think we're also seeing a change. So Nicolas, perhaps you can elucidate on how you see tourism and
yes,
what that means to you.
To bounce back on what you're saying, Ben. So the space industry is about $464 billion economy. Primarily, it's been fueled in the past decade by satellite communication. So our ability to communicate on our mobile, on the internet, has been really fueled by a vast majority of new satellites. Earth observation also has been booming with a lot of granular analysis of multiple things on Earth, from weather, obviously, to sustainability, climate change, and others. But one of the most exciting evolution, indeed, has been commercial human spaceflight. Think about that. In roughly the past 70 years of the space race, and certainly the past 50, 630 humans went from Earth to space, 630. In 2020, there were 8 people that were commercial purchase, pretty much tourists, 8. Now, since 2021, the past 2 years, we have 60 more. And at the moment here, there's 2,000 people who downpaid significant amount of money to actually fly suborbital, orbital. So it's really a very strong tip of the iceberg, because the analysis kind of framed there's about 25 million people that are very, very, very dedicated to the space experience. So these numbers are no small amount, and they're really fueling the biggest growth of the most exciting space company, SpaceX, Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, Axiom. All these companies primarily fuel their commercial growth with space tourism, with commercial human spaceflight. To fly for a few minutes on the vicinity of a space at 100 kilometers of altitude, to do a round trip of Earth for a few days, to go around the moon, eventually to go to the moon and Mars. Today there's 4 tickets that have been purchased to do around the moon trips. And currently they're very expensive. It's about $50 million to spend a week in space. It takes about $1 to $1.5 million to actually go a few minutes in suborbital at 100 kilometers. So it's really the beginning of that journey, but it's very real. And it's no different probably than previous travel industry. Flying in the 1920s was probably as expensive as going to space today.
So I know what you're thinking. Nicolas is sitting there and telling us we're all going to space for millions of dollars, 630 people, 2,000 tickets closed. It doesn't really sound anything that we should be thinking about when you look at what our colleagues from Ruad Al Medina are saying, 42,000 keys happening very soon, Neom, Red Sea, all of the other colleagues that we have at this event. However, I think there's a different spin when you look at this, and it's about not going to space itself, it's about the aspiration of going to space. And when I look at what many of the activations are doing around Saudi, that idea of aspiration, that idea of journey, that idea of change is going to be something I think that's going to be central to so many of the experiences that we have.
Ben, allow me to jump in, because the Kingdom is going to have a very exciting event in the coming weeks with Saudi astronauts going to space. We're all very excited about this important milestone. And when you look at every single country that has been privileged to send humans into space to represent that country, these people always end up in the top 5 most favored personalities, most highly respected, most well-known personalities in their respective countries. That's very telling, more than researcher, more than scientists, more than singers or football players. Astronauts in Germany, in France, in Japan, in the US, always hit the top most favorite personality, the most inspiring personality, to echo what Ben was just saying.
100%. And I think it's when we look at this business here for us in the kingdom, to me, what makes me think is, how do we start taking that profile, that aspiration, that desire of all of those people that want to have that experience, and be able to convert it into something that A, they're going to do more than once, and B, that is financially accessible. So I look back at, as a European, my ancestors were wandering off into various different countries, but you had to go for 2 months and you had to go by boat, and it was a very long concept of tourism. Since the 60s, the 70s, the 80s and 90s, and now, the mid-market and lower-end market tourist is no longer a recent arrival. They're an experienced consumer of travel and of tourism. So how can we start giving them something different which allows them to connect? So I think Nicolas and one of the concepts that he's working have kind of worked out a way where we can start connecting with technology to be able to deliver that experience to a much wider community than you can when you just originally think about this as a billionaire sport.
Indeed. For background, I come from hospitality background. I own a boutique hotel in the southwest of France. Fairly small, 30 keys, redesigned entirely by Philippe Starck, one of the very successful French boutique hotel. And we've been really growing into a more experiential tourism for now pretty much a decade. But I've always been a tech entrepreneur, and I started my first space company about 10 years ago, which really led to creation of Orbite. 4 years ago was this acknowledgement of what Ben called out, which is the collision, in a way, of the stronger appetite of experiential tourism. I heard it in numerous panels today, and certainly you've experienced it yourself, to the actual journey of a lifetime. And certainly as we look into the broader aspiration of finding a meaning in the human journey all up, and where we're going as a species, space plays an important role. So Orbite has really desired to effectively train anybody who is interested in going into space. We started about 2 years ago active trainings for a number of astronauts, candidates, and we realized as we were testing some of our assumptions and various experiences that, again, as Ben was saying, many, many more were willing to find a purpose, test their limits, find a different appreciation of their life, of their vision of Earth. In many ways, space does question what is this fragile mothership we're on in time of anxiety related to sustainability. It actually is a very grounded experience to provide a perspective. So we actually developed a number of combination of very real physical experience. We provide zero-G flights. These flights that give you a sensation of zero-G for a few seconds on Earth. High-G flights with small planes. We limit we experience what is to go to space. We do a lot of coaching with a number of coaches that provide a perspective of this, what remains a dangerous experience, but dangerous means also exciting to a degree, especially when you're not necessarily going into space, down with a more intimate knowledge of the Earth, how it works, as it relates to all of us humans. And we tested a number of scenarios, a number of formula, and we really saw how exciting it was. So we ended up deciding to build with Philippe Starck a full training center in North America. And last October, we signed an MOU in the Kingdom to really look into developing a site here with very specific, exciting perspective the Kingdom can provide. So, Kingdom, why space, why tourism? And I think that's something we may end up discussing a bit, Ben.
Completely. And I think, for me, when I look at what is unique about what we have in Saudi Arabia, for me, what I always say is marble is dead. When you're talking about luxury now, nobody wants to go into another big hotel that looks the same as one you saw on the other side of the world, covered in the same, slightly impersonal marble walls, marble floors. It's fine. But if you're going to do it, you can do it in Italy. You can do it in Singapore. You can do it in a place that's already established. The reality of what we have in Saudi is we have these incredible landscapes, these incredible opportunities to start from scratch. So I think if you look at what we can do here, whether it's the similarities of the Hisma in Neom to the Martian surface, whether it's the extremities of some of the desert environments, whether it's some of the other regions, whether it's using kind of underwater training facilities, we have a way to shape all of the amazing resources we have in the kingdom and deploy them to capture that emotion, that inspiration, and turn that into something which people can come back again and again and again to expand their engagement in a different type of tourism. So to me, I don't know anybody who regularly goes to stay in a standard 5-star hotel and defines that as luxury. I know a lot of people who do it for business, but now everybody wants something different. There's something which is hot, it's the place to be, it's unusual, it's different. You go back because it's curated to a different kind of level. So I think this idea of why space in the kingdom fits in is we have such a heavy emphasis on technology. And that technology, not only in the space sector, but in many others, as we heard from our metaverse colleagues, if you start extrapolating that out, you can have a full experience that's tied to what you're seeing outside of your window, to what you're seeing inside of an incredible world-class facility. And that is something that nobody else is offering. So I think when we look at what are the biggest challenges of our sector in the tourism space in the KSA? For me, there's an awful lot of keys being developed. So how are we going to make sure that we not only differentiate internally in the country and deconflict, but we also make sure we're not the only ones expanding our tourism markets. Other countries are doing the same. And to be able to capture that increasingly sophisticated global audience of tourists is going to be the challenge for any country around the world. So being able to leverage these new levers, using technology, using things like space, and blending the physical with the technical, with the aspirational and the trip to the stars, whether you're on it or whether you're experiencing it, I think kind of really is a sweet spot for how we can make ourselves something very unique.
And if you think about, nevertheless, what forged luxury brands that we know today, memory of places around the world, they all started with this journey, this travel that has been evolving so much. I mean, I was talking to Ben about the creation of Hermès, French brand that was built out of horse carriage. Louis Vuitton, chests that were on Streamliner, the defining luxury of the travel you could bring. And if you look at what could be done here in the kingdom, what you could all work towards, as the kingdom have made a clear statement that space is an important industry where the kingdom will be focused, I think all these keys that we have available being built could also connect with that experience, that journey, that will make the kingdom very special moving forward. And so it's a quite exciting perspective to blend these two things together here.
So I think overall, if we can leave you with one message for many of the amazing projects that we're hearing about that are in development or being developed, that it is about this idea of differentiation, and it's about making sure that the vision we have 2030 or beyond is leveraging all of these amazing things that we're doing in the kingdom and how we can weave that in to a whole new tourism experience that takes all of the amazing things that we're doing and turns it into a utterly unique destination. So
something you share with your friends and family, something you bring new friends to come and experience again and again.
And I think, in a lot of the areas that we work outside of hospitality and tourism, I'm always saying, I want to see something that I don't need to tell somebody it's Saudi, they know. And I think as we start blending these things, it's a unique opportunity for the world to be able to go, it's tech, it's unusual, it's experiential, it's luxury, it's accessible, it's definitely Saudi. So I think on that note, that I hope is how a tech sector can contribute to the dream and the goals of Saudi Arabia and we can do something uniquely different, blending together all of the incredible resources that we have at our disposal going forward. Nicolas?
You said it, perfect closing. Thank you so much for traveling to space with us today.